The Preußen is a legendary tier German battleship and the reward for the ongoing May/June 2025 campaign of World of Warships Legends. I've got two matches for you in the Preußen. Both of them are, I think, worth showing in their entirety. This first one is a little bit less interesting, perhaps, than the second, but they're both 200,000 damage matches. And before we really get into the proceedings, I should show you the build that I was using for the commander on this review. It's actually Franz von Hipper. I wanted specifically to make sure I could get this ship to work and form an opinion on it using a completely free to play build. So here's the Hipper build. Note that the two inspirations are Swirsky and Kondo. It's also been a long time since I've used Hipper as the commander on any German battleship, just because there are so many paid options. And he's got this skill called Knight's Tale that I don't remember him having. It increases damage against battleships, cruisers, and destroyers by a certain percentage. 12% against battleships, 6% against cruisers and destroyers. That'll probably come in handy during these two games and help us net our 200k damage totals. Anyway, the Preußen is basically a different kind of take on the Grosse Kurfürst. It's got a similar hull. In fact, the armor schemes are practically identical. One thing I will say, though, is that the turret armor on the Preußen has a 75 millimeter plating between the turret and the barbette. And I don't know if it's that, but something has caused my turrets to get knocked out, at least temporarily, in practically every match I've played in the Preußen. And not even at close brawling range. You're not always going to want to be in close range in this ship, as you'll see as these two battles progress. But the turrets have been knocked out temporarily in practically every match. I'm sure it'll happen at some point in this one or the next one. I've played about 11 matches in this thing, and so far the win rate is 73%, so it's performing well. Anyway, back to what I was saying about the Preußen being a different kind of take on the GK. It eliminates some of the issues that GK has, but at the same time, it retains some of the major downsides. One of the issues that it mitigates somewhat is the firing angles on the main battery guns. I think they are slightly better firing forward than the GK, and obviously the guns do a lot of damage. We'll run down the stats as usual, and keep in mind they're influenced by my Hipper build. We've got 95,200 HP, which I think is a little bit less than the GK. The torpedo damage reduction is a mere 25%, not great, but we do have the sonar to theoretically help mitigate that. It's the same sonar as the GK, with an excellent ship detection range of 6 kilometers, but a pitiful, almost useless duration of 60 seconds. It really makes you be deliberate on when you deploy it. You have to, only if you know that you're in imminent danger of getting torpedoed, and you're only going to have about 60 seconds of advanced warning. That's one of the downsides this thing retains from the GK. Also related to the HP pool is the heals. As you can see, there are only two. It comes with only two base, just like the GK, which is not great, in my opinion. And they're also conventional battleship heals. They restore 475 HP per second with a duration of 28 seconds. So they're not super heals or improved in any way. But survivability aspects aside, between the heal and the sonar, the guns, as you've been able to see from this opening sequence here against these broadside ships, well, they're very good, and Yamato is about to demonstrate that to us again. These are 8 457mm or 18-inch guns. With this build, they've got a range of 20.5 kilometers, and they have an absurd reload of 21.6 seconds. That's just with the reload mod in the 4th module slot. That's nothing else influencing this reload as far as the commander skills go. It's just 21.6 seconds on 8 18-inch guns. Very, very good, especially for this tier. 35-second turret traverse on these 18-inch guns. Pretty snappy. The HE parameters are likewise interesting. It's got a maximum HE shell damage of 5,450, which is very low. It's a German battleship, of course, so you would expect the HE alpha to be low. But the fire chance is 45%, and it's come in handy for me more than a couple of times. I've run into some situations where there's just some bow tanking battleships that are sort of intractable, reversing, and I didn't really have an opportunity to get around to their broadside. So just switch to the HE with the 21-second reload, light a couple fires, maybe prompt them to move, switch back to the AP and wreck them. And the AP does wreck. It's got a maximum damage per shell of 15,250, which is almost the highest in the game. I think it's the second highest, behind Georgia and Ohio, which, if I remember correctly, both have an AP alpha of 15,750. So not much of a difference. The damage that these guns do is very similar to Ohio level output. As for the AA, I don't know. I haven't actually run into any CVs while playing this ship for over 11 games at this point. But the aggregate AA defense rating is 94, for whatever that's worth. I assume it can't really protect itself. Now, the maneuverability, another sort of low light, I suppose, on this ship. It's very similar to the GK. We've got a top speed of 30.9 knots, which is fine. A turning circle, though, of 1,050 meters, which is gigantic. And the rudder shift is 20.4 seconds, although I think I'm nerfing that a little bit with my Hipper build. I want to say there's something on Hipper that nerfs the rudder shift. I think it's the marksman skill that gives you a 10% dispersion bonus at the expense of 7% rudder nerf. And then the concealment. Well, with the concealment mod and my double concealment inspirations of Kondo and Swirsky, we enjoy a 12.6 kilometer detect by sea. I've got it down to 12.5 if I wanted to switch to Azerlane Sovetski Rossiya. But again, I wanted to make sure I could do this with a free-to-play build. The reason I've got concealment spec'd so heavily, by the way, is precisely because this thing only has 2 heals. You've seen the concealment come in handy during this battle, especially earlier on. We were able to get into a position in the center of the map while all the rest of our battleship teammates sailed up the flank. Because they were all sailing up the flank, and because we turned back to go to the center, we were able to get crossfires, which is why we have 7 citadels and 211,000 damage done. Again, I always say, don't put your battleships in the same area of the map. If even just one battleship goes into a different place and obtains a crossfire, you can sometimes get results like this. That's practically the only reason, is because of our positioning. And, of course, concealment helps you attain positions much easier than if you're spotted at 13 or 14 kilometers. It allows you to get closer to the action without being focused on the way in. And you wouldn't want to be focused in this thing if you've only got 2 heals. HE spam will melt you very quickly. I have another match that I don't think I'll cut into this video. It's already too long anyway. But I have another match in the Preußen using Azerlane Prinz Heinrich without Master Mechanic, but with the skill that gives you even more accuracy. So I only had 2 heals with that build too, and I got into a scenario where a Worcester took away more than half of my HP just alone, sort of sitting behind an island. Eventually I sunk him, but I was lucky he was alone. If he had any teammates to help him, I would have sunk very easily. So that's why we've got the concealment, to improve the survivability. And it's been working for me. Of course, you could spec into double accuracy if you want, but as you can see from these results, the double concealment build, with just Hipper at the helm, there's no problem with the guns. On to the second game, which I think is a little bit more interesting. We've basically covered the stats already of the Preußen. I'll talk a little bit more about the armor scheme. Like I said, it's pretty much identical to the GK, although there does seem to be a problem with maybe the turrets not being as well armored as they could be. I don't think we actually lost any turrets in that last match, maybe this one. In fact, I'm almost 100% sure we will be losing turrets. Anyway, the armor It has 50 millimeter deck plating. It's got the trademark German turtleback, which makes it resistant to citadels. And much like the GK on the bow, it's got an icebreaker with a 60 millimeter plate that covers probably 90% of the bow. It's only the top upper sliver of the bow that's 32 millimeters and overmatchable by the likes of Yamato. So, what we have here is a German battleship that really performs as a mid to long range sniper, even though it's got all the armor required for brawling. That being said, it's got the superstructure the size of some cruisers, and so that's very farmable, much like you would expect on a German battleship. For whatever it's worth, too, I think the historical camo is lovely. Speaking of Worcesters, we were talking about that earlier. This is not the game where the Worcester melts me. In fact, we're going to get a good hit there on the Worcester with these 18-inch guns. No citadels, but Worcester does have 32 millimeter bow plating. It also has 25 millimeter side plating, so if you aim at the sides and don't hit the bow, well, catastrophe, basically. Minotaur, can we get a hit on him? No, we'll sit here for a moment and wait for the Worcester. This match is going to develop poorly in comparison to the last. The results are not going to be quite as good. Last match was a pretty simple win with a 200k damage result just by virtue of centralized positioning. This match, we're out on a flank on estuary. Worcester's peeking around the island again. Big risk there. This time we do find the Citadel. He's nearly dead, and we're up to 44,000 damage in just 2 salvos. These guns are accurate, and so this ship can be played at these mid to long ranges like a sniper. And again, having this concealment is nice. Worcester doesn't even spot us, so he can't focus us down with his HE, but we are able to finish him off. For the first blood medal and the first kill of the game, we get the Pitadel to boot. This flank is now clear of a radar cruiser, unless Minnow is running radar. He's still somewhere north of that island. And he's got our destroyer pursuing him. But if we take a look at the minimap, things in this match are going to start going poorly. We've got all of our ships on this side of the map. There's one battleship left in our base. And then on the other flank, there's a destroyer who, now that his cruiser teammate went down, is completely alone. That's why we are making this turn. We've recognized that we are on the strong flank. We've got one battleship, 2 cruisers, and a destroyer sailing north toward the enemy cap. If they cannot complete this maneuver or this push alone, then we're in big trouble. But there's no way the friendly destroyer and the friendly battleship are going to be surviving together against both of the enemy team's destroyers, a cruiser, and a battleship. That's why I'm turning back to our base, because I know in a matter of minutes it's going to be contested by these enemy ships, and in order to have a chance at winning this game, we're going to have to go protect the base. So as we sail in, there will be a bit of a lull. This ship is as advertised. It is a sniper, like they said, but because it's got the German armor scheme, it also has brawling capabilities. You just might not want to do that with Hipper at the helm because of the lack of healing. You could use Ciliax. I did try that, and it worked well enough. Although there are no commander skills on Ciliax's tree that spec into accuracy. And without that, the guns are a little bit less accurate, noticeably so. They can still perform well enough, and then you could take Ciliax for the extra healing through Master Mechanic. But at the same time, you would be cutting down the main battery range. Ciliax really has no way of speccing into that, which is why I think I would recommend Hipper for the free-to-play build. Now, if you have one of the 5 billion paid German commanders, your choices are a lot more varied. I think the 2 best options would be to go with Henry J. Hyde or perhaps with Azerlane Heinrich. I tested her out a little bit, and she does seem pretty good. But the only thing to consider there, if you are going to use Hyde or Azerlane Heinrich, is that you can spec into the accuracy and you can get Master Mechanic at the same time. They're basically the hybrid type commanders, which is why I think they'd probably be a better choice than hipper. Having 2 heals base really does kind of hurt, unless you want to play passively like I've done in these matches for the very beginning, and then save your HP a little bit and brawl later on in the game. That's certainly a strategy you could try to employ, and that's sort of what we're doing in this battle. Schlieffen, broadside to us behind the islands. He does not have turtleback, unlike this ship, and still no citadel. 14,000 damage, though, not bad. We're in a sticky situation. We got this battleship next to us. I don't think he's going to be around for long. These destroyers are undoubtedly pushing in somewhere. We've also got Napoli encroaching on the base. Napoli, known as a cockroach among the community, is notoriously hard to sink with its armor. But, as you can see, we do get some good pens in there through his bow. Also ricochet some shells, probably off the icebreaker scheme. And we've got that Montana out there in the distance, broadside to us. Maybe we can get a hit on him. In any case, as we're shooting at this Montana with our incredible 21-second reload, I think this is a good ship. I'd say it's well worth buying the Admiralty backing and completing this campaign. The community, for reasons that are beyond me, seem to really love German battleships a lot. And this is the kind of German battleship that I think the majority of the community would appreciate, namely one with very accurate main battery guns that hit hard. That's not typically what you think of with German battleships. You think of inaccurate guns that are most usable at close brawling range. You don't have to do that. This gives you, I suppose, sort of a taste of Ohio, and I think that's probably the comparison that most people will make. They will ask, is the Preußen basically a German Ohio? The answer to that is sort of yes, but I still think the Ohio is a better ship. Namely because it has 3 heals base, and they are the quick cooldown heals that reload in 40 seconds. With Master Mechanic, you can get 5 of them. Also, I think the Ohio's armor scheme is, in some ways, more tanky than the Preußen, even though it does have less armor. It's also got less superstructure, and the heals are improved over the Preußen. So even if it does lose more HP to HE, penetration, fires, etc., it can heal much more of that back than Preußen can. Also, you could spec into the secondaries on Ohio, and while they don't penetrate anything, well, they do penetrate some stuff, but they're destroyer caliber guns. They're very accurate, and they light a lot of fires. Preußen, on the other hand, seems to have standard secondary accuracy. The secondaries do pen 32 millimeters of armor, being German, but they only have a 6-kilometer base range, and so I don't think you're incentivized to build into them at all. You could certainly try, but I think the range will top out somewhere around 10 kilometers, and you'll be sacrificing the efficacy of the main guns, which seems to be the bread and butter of this ship. Now, though, it's make or break time. In this battle, we've lost 3 ships. Enemy teams only lost 1. Both of the enemy destroyers are right here in front of us. We've got a friendly destroyer who's spotting Z-52. We're going to try to take him out with this salvo from the main battery guns. Almost do. We get the high caliber metal, but Lucian is going down, probably spotted by Z-52 sonar. Can we get another shot on him? No. Lucian goes down before we can get a shot off, but Chung Mu is still spotted in a little bit of a turn. Our teammate takes him out. The cap is almost clear from destroyer threat, but we still have that Z-52 to worry about. And we've got Montana over here, so we're going to have to play this carefully. We've almost evened out the kill count. We've lost 4 ships to the enemy's 3, but if we play this scenario right, we can give our team a chance to win. What we need to be most concerned about is the Z-52 in the cap. If we take him out and then take out the Montana, I think we've set up the win conditions for this match. There's Z-52 firing at us from inside of the smoke screen. Our sonar is more than a minute away from cooldown, so we're going to have to use the old-fashioned blind fire. We think we pinpoint his location, but we're wrong. He's moving a little bit to the right, as you can see from the next location from his firing, and he continues to move to the right. This time, we take more precise aim, and we get the blind fire kill on the Z-52, clearing out the cap, aside from the Napoli that's pushing in. And here, I think we could have won this game if we had made some different choices. We needed to avoid the ram from this Montana. And if we had done that and been able to survive and take out the Napoli, well, I think we would have won this match. But as it stands, we don't get out of the way. We do get rammed. Bit understandable, I suppose, with a 1,000-meter turning circle and a 20-second rudder shift. But ultimately, we're not going to win this match. The Colombo gets stuck here inside of the base, even though I think he could have pushed forward a long time ago and maybe gotten the reset on that Napoli, who ultimately caps us out, and we lose. Bit of a tragedy, but 200,000 damage matches right in a row with Hipper at the helm. To be fair, the ram is what got us to 200k, but had we not been rammed, we were at 189,000, and we would have had a Montana and Napoli to shoot at. So I think this ship is more than capable of doing the damage output. It is a very good mid to long range sniper, and I think it's well worth grinding this campaign to get it. It may be the most accurate German battleship they've ever released, and perhaps one of the best German battleships they've ever released. I'm not 100% sold on that, but it's better than the GK, and it's a nice battleship to have at Legendary tier, in my opinion. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.